I want to welcome all of the board members, all the staff, and guests who are with us today. I think we have. We'll know in a minute when Kim polls the members, but it may be that we have all members present today, including our newest member, who is Janice McKinney. Janice, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, thank you. For those of you who don't know, Janice was appointed as a member of this board by the Speaker of the Assembly on 12 June of this year, which means that as of today, she has been a member of the DASNY board for 12 whole days.
Right.
She is the executive director of the True Community Development Corp, and she's been involved in various housing rehabilitation and development projects. She is our second board member from Buffalo, which means that Buffalo probably now has on this board a greater presence than it has ever had. And we'll see how that all works out. Janice is a person who takes affordable housing and economic growth in Buffalo very seriously, and particularly in communities where both affordable housing and economic growth are serious concerns. She has a BA and an MA in organizational leadership. Now, did I get all that right, Janice?
It's fine. I'm Janice. That's all that's really important.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Yes.
We have to have certain notifications, but I think before that, Kim is going to poll the membership just to make sure we know who's on.
Thank you, Al. In addition to yourself, we have John Johnson, John Gardner, Beryl Snyder, Joan Sullivan, Jerry Romsky, Adrian Schwarziski, Brian Chechnicki, Tracy Raleigh, and Janice McKinney.
So we have everyone with us.
We do not have Wellington Chen at this point. I believe that he is planning to join us somewhere around 10.
I saw that sometime after 10 o'clock. Thank you, Kim. There are various notifications we're required to give, given that we are not meeting face-to-face, but are on the phone and on the Zoom screen. Michael Cusack is going to do that for us. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On March 7th, 2020, Governor Cuomo declared a disaster emergency in the state of New York due to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19. Pursuant to Governor Cuomo's subsequent executive order 202.1 dated March 12th, 2020, as extended by executive orders 202.14, 202.28, and 202.38, today's regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, or DASNY, is being conducted telephonically and by video conference. Executive Order 202.1, as extended, provides in relevant part that Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, known as the Open Meetings Law, is suspended through July 7th, 2020, to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take such actions authorized by the law without permitting in public, in-person access to meetings, and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. The location of today's conference call and video conference meeting of the DASNY board is designated as the DASNY headquarters, 515 Broadway, Albany, New York, where I am located. Notice of this meeting has been posted in the standard locations that are publicly accessible. Notice has also been posted prominently on the DASNY.org public website. In accordance with EO 202.1, as extended, and the DASNY bylaws, a video recording of the meeting will be accessible from DASNY's website, www.dasny.org, not later than 2 business days after the close of the meeting, and today's proceedings will also be transcribed and posted as soon thereafter as is reasonable and practicable under the circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, thank you very much. We'll move into the agenda, but first I did forget to say that our newest member, Janice McKinney, I believe has not yet taken her oath of office.
Right, correct.
Which means that you are ineligible. You may not vote at this meeting.
Right.
But it'll happen quickly, and you'll certainly vote at the next meeting.
Yes.
Our first agenda item is the approval of the transcripts of the May 6th and the June 3rd special meeting. You all have had a chance to review the transcripts. Are there any proposed changes? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve them? And I'm going to approve them both in one motion. This is our regular meeting of May 6th and the June 3rd special meeting. May I have a motion?
You got it, Al. Jerry.
Jerry, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Beryl.
Beryl, thank you so much. Welcome to the call. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Aye, thank you. And we'll help Kim now. I'll ask whether there are any opposed. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Both transcripts are approved. We'll go to tab 2, which is the New York.
May I interrupt you for just one moment? There has somebody else has joined us in the waiting room. Would you like
Yes.
to admit?
Please get the ID.
Good morning. May I ask who just joined us at phone number 215-300-3681?
This is Mark Salamina from Optimal Capital Group.
Thank you.
Kim, let me know when you're ready.
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. Behind tab 2, is the request that we adopt financing documents. Ruben, you're going to take this part of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and good morning to everyone. Behind tab 2 is the New York Institute of Technology. The transaction summary update and the following presenting will be done by Sonny Williams and Seth Bryant of Bryant Rubino, and Dave Ostrander of DASNY is available if we have questions. So, Sonny, I believe you'll be reporting on the Bond Counsel report. Sonny?
Yes, thank you, Ruben. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Sonny Williams. I'm a partner at Bryant Rubino, and we're bond counsel in connection with the proposed issuance of up to $30 million of DASNY's New York Institute of Technology Revenue Bonds, Series 2020A, which I will refer to as the Series 2020A bonds. I'm here with my partner, Seth Bryant, and during this presentation, I will describe the particulars for the upcoming financing. New York Institute of Technology, the institution, has requested that DASNY issue the Series 2020A bonds, which are to be used to refund all or a portion of DASNY's outstanding New York Institute of Technology Revenue Bonds, Series 2016A, federally taxable, of which principal of $17,635,000 remains outstanding. I will refer to these bonds as the Series 2016A bonds. The Series 2016A bonds were issued to refund bonds previously issued by the industrial development agencies of Nassau County and Suffolk County to finance or refinance the cost of the construction, furnishing, and equipping of various facilities on the institution's Old Westbury and Central Islip campuses. For the purpose of this presentation, the Series 2016A bonds to be refunded are referred to as the refunded bonds. Aside from the 2016A bonds, no other DASNY bonds issued on behalf of the institution are outstanding. The anticipated bond structure contemplates the issuance of the Series 2020A bonds as one series of fixed-rate taxable bonds with no credit enhancement. And a portion of the proceeds of the Series 2020A bonds is expected to be used to pay cost of issuance of the Series 2020A bonds. The maturities of the Series 2020A bonds are expected to track the maturities of the refunded bonds. And the Series 2020A bonds are proposed to be sold to Morgan Stanley & Co. as underwriter pursuant to a standard bond purchase agreement. The general resolution for the New York Institute of Technology revenue bonds was adopted by DASNY in 2016, and it sets forth the general terms for each series of bonds that may be issued pursuant to series resolutions adopted from time to time by DASNY. Under the general resolution, bonds may be issued to finance or refinance the cost of one or more projects of the institution, to refund notes or bonds of DASNY or other indebtedness of the institution, and to pay costs of issuance on the bonds. Before you today is the series resolution authorizing the issuance of up to 30 million of Series 2020A bonds for the purpose of paying or providing for the payment of the refunded bonds. Although it is anticipated that all Series 2020A bonds will be issued as fixed-rate bonds, the series resolution also provides flexibility for other rate modes. The series resolution delegates to various officers of DASNY the power to determine or provide for customary matters related to the Series 2020A bonds. In connection with the issuance of the Series 2020A bonds, DASNY and the institution will enter into a loan agreement, which will obligate the institution to make installments of, to make payment installments of and interest on the Series 2020A bonds. The institution's obligations to make payments will be general obligations of the institution, absolute and unconditional. The loan agreement is also expected to contain financial covenants consistent with current market standards. It is currently expected that to secure its obligations under the loan agreement, the institution will pledge certain revenues, namely tuition and fees charged to students, which we call the pledge revenues. And that will be pledged pursuant to a security agreement, and there will also be a mortgage on a portion of the institution's Old Westbury campus, which also secures the Series 2016A bonds. This mortgage property and the pledge revenues are considered collateral. And for as long as there are Series 2016A bonds remaining outstanding following the issuance of the Series 2020A bonds, this collateral will be considered shared collateral. Concurrently with the issuance of the Series 2020A bonds, DASNY and Manufacturers and Traders Trust, as trustee for both the Series 2016A bonds and the Series 2020A bonds, will enter into an intercreditor agreement, which will provide for the equal priorities of the liens upon the shared collateral and any cash proceeds realized from the enforcement, foreclosure, or other realization upon the shared collateral, while any Series 2016A bonds remain outstanding. Concurrently with the issuance of the Series 2020A bonds, DASNY shall pledge and assign its rights to and interest in the loan agreement, the security agreement, the collateral, and the mortgage securing the Series 2020A bonds. That will be assigned to the trustee as security for the payment for the Series 2020A bonds. This assignment shall not include DASNY's unassigned rights, as such term is defined in the loan agreement. This concludes our presentation, but we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sonny. If anyone has questions, both Dave and Sonny are available for questions. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ruben. Sonny, would you take a second, please, and walk through, with you and Seth, walk through the intercreditor agreement? Is that, I think that's what you called it.
Yes. As we said, there are the security interest in the collateral while the 2016A bonds are outstanding will be shared. You have-
Okay. I didn't hear the first thing you said. I think I now understand, but finish, please.
Yes. The thought is that there may be only a portion of the Series 2016A bonds taken out by the Series 2020A bonds. And because there's collateral that secures both the Series 2016A bonds and the Series 2020A bonds, that would be shared collateral while any 16A bonds are outstanding. So we will have to have that agreement in place so that we can, have
Disperse appropriately. Sure.
Yes, priorities of the liens.
Okay. Sonny, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Sonny and Seth?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make one clarifying point. The refunding bonds, the 2020 bonds, will not necessarily track the maturities of the 2016A bonds. We talked about it at resolution to proceed last month. They'll actually be extending the maturity to provide cash flow savings over the next 3 years. So, there will be an extension here. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
I think I remember it from the presentation last month, but, and thank you. Are there any other questions for bond counsel? Hearing none, the resolution is behind tab 2. It is very brief. Are there any questions about it? Thank you. Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
You got it, Al. Jerry.
Thank you, Gerard. Thank you. Is there a second?
John Johnson, second.
All right, John. Thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye. Well, let's go the other way. Is there any opposition to the approval of the resolution? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So behind tab 3 is the Touro College Obligated Group. You'll recall that in April, we brought the first read of this transaction to the Finance Committee and the board. During the last couple of months, it was determined that a private placement was the best way to execute on this transaction. That was contemplated as one of the delivery possibilities in April. And so we now have Matt Bergen from the staff and Chuck Toto of Hawkins, Delafield and Wood, and Robert James of Golden Holly James, co-bond counsel, all here to present on this transaction. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. President. And good morning, everyone. I'd like to give a brief update in the financing. As stated, it's currently expected that the Series 2020A bonds will be directly placed with Zions Bank Corporation, doing business as California Bank and Trust. This is a qualified institutional buyer, and the purchaser will require a debt service reserve fund. The bank has entered into a commitment with the obligated group to hold the Series 2020A bonds for an initial period of 10 years. The Series 2020A bonds will bear interest at a fixed rate of 3.69% during this time, and the bonds will be subject to mandatory tender at the end of this initial period. Also, as a brief update, there was some discussion of the need for a small taxable tail, but I have been informed that this is not needed. And so, Mr. President and Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would now like to hand the presentation over to Robert James from the firm Golden Holly James.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, officers. Thank you for the opportunity to continue in service of DASNY and the state of New York. My name is Robert James. I'm from the firm Golden Holly James, LLP. As Matt stated, my firm and Hawkins, Delafield and Wood, LLP are serving as bond counsel in connection with the issuance of the Dormitory Authority, by the Dormitory Authority of its Touro College and University System Obligated Group Revenue Bonds, Series 2020A. Chuck Toto of Hawkins and I will present the financing.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning. I'll briefly discuss the financing and then turn it back to Robert to present the resolution. Hello, it's a pleasure to be with you once again, virtually. On May 14th, 2014, yes, it really has been 6 years. the authority adopted its Toro College and University System Obligated Group Revenue Bond Resolution, which authorizes the issuance by the authority of revenue bonds from time to time for New York members of the Toro College and University Obligated Group. The New York members are Toro College, which has its offices in Midtown Manhattan, and New York Medical College, which has its main campus in Valhalla. The members of the obligated group outside New York State are Toro University in California and Toro University, Nevada. Now, pursuant to that bond resolution and series resolutions subsequently adopted, the authority has issued its $55,960,000 tax-exempt revenue bonds and $38,325,000 taxable revenue bonds in 2014, and $64,015,000 in tax-exempt revenue bonds in 2017. Today, the authority is being asked to consider adopting a series resolution authorizing the issuance of the Toro College and University System Obligated Group Revenue Bonds, Series 2020A, in a maximum principal amount of $60 million. Proceeds of the bonds are to be applied for the purpose of financing the cost of acquisition and renovation of a two-story condominium unit to be located in Manhattan, to be used as the administrative offices for the college, and to finance the cost of improvements and upgrades to critical energy management infrastructure to create what Toro is calling a highly efficient shared laboratory environment up at New York Medical College in Valhalla. In addition, funds will be applied to fund a reserve fund, pay capitalized interest on the bonds, and pay cost of issuance. As Matt indicated a few moments ago, the bonds will be placed with Zions Bank Corporation, doing business as California Bank and Trust, a qualified institutional buyer, who we are calling the purchaser. The purchasers entered into a 10-year commitment, as Matt has indicated. And this 10-year commitment is what we're calling the initial period. The initial period is not the full maturity of the bonds, but the bank's purchase commitment, which is 10 years. And during this period, the bonds will bear interest at a fixed rate, as Matt has indicated. And the expectation is that these will be federally tax-exempt bonds. The resolution in front of you authorizes also the issuance of taxable bonds. However, again, as Matt has indicated, it's the expectation that this is not necessary. Furthermore, as Robert will explain in more detail in a couple of moments, the resolution permits the authority's authorized officers to issue the bonds in other configurations in the unlikely event it's desired by the New York members and the purchaser. The bonds are subject to this mandatory tender at the end of the initial period, unless otherwise redeemed or converted. Now, after this mandatory tender, the New York members will be obligated to pay the purchase price of the bonds, and this will be paid either in connection with the remarketing to another bondholder, or the current holder has the option to hold the bonds for longer than this period at an interest rate to be agreed upon between them and the Toro members, the New York members. Well, that's a brief summary of the financing, and I'll turn it back to Robert, who will now present the resolution.
Before we do that, Chuck, this is Al.
Morning, Al.
How are you? Wanted to make sure that I'm clear that the private placement agreement is in place. That is, all the details of that have been agreed.
Yes, I mean the bank commitment has been executed. The formula for the interest rate has been set, even though, as common with these formulas, you typically don't set the actual rate until you get a little closer. But you get a little closer to closing.
Okay.
But yes, and you know, I mean, these resolutions provide some optionality, which sometimes is needed. Here we have a pretty tight proximity between today's meeting and the closing. So, I can let Matt comment, but I think the transaction is fairly well baked at this point.
Matt, I'll ask you to comment.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the transaction, especially with the bank, has been moving along for the past couple months. We've had a number of working group meetings. and we are getting ready to close shortly hereafter. But yes, everything is fully finalized with the bank at this point.
Terrific, Matt. Thank you. Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. It's the chair's prerogative. So,
You're kind.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Chuck mentioned earlier, the Series 2020A resolution supplements the bond resolution to authorize the issuance of the Series 2020A bonds and permits the authority's authorized officers on behalf of the authority to issue all or a portion of the Series 2020A bonds in other configurations than are currently contemplated, if desired by the New York members and the purchaser. The resolution delegates to DASNY's authorized officers the authority to determine the following non-exhaustive list of terms of the Series 2020A bonds. The principal amount of the bonds to be issued, the principal amount of each maturity of the bonds, and the respective portions of the Series 2028 bonds to be allocated to Touro College and New York Medical College, provided that the aggregate principal amount of the bonds cannot exceed $60 million. The date or dates on which the bonds will mature and the principal amount of each maturity of the bonds, provided that no bond may mature later than 32 years from the January 1st succeeding its issuance date. The provisions regarding tender for purchase or redemption of the bonds and the redemption price, subject to certain conditions. Whether the bonds will be issued as fixed rate bonds or variable interest rate bonds. The rate or rates at which the bonds will bear interest. And if the bonds are issued as variable interest rate bonds, the manner in which the subsequent interest rates will be determined, provided that the true interest cost of the bonds that are fixed rate bonds and the initial interest rate on bonds that are variable interest rate bonds may not exceed 7.5% if issued as tax exempt and 10% if issued as federally taxable. The debt service reserve fund requirement for the bonds and the allocable portion for each New York member that each New York member must contribute. Whether to obtain credit or liquidity enhancement with respect to the bonds and the terms and conditions of that enhancement. Whether the bonds will be issued in one or more subseries. Furthermore, as Chuck explained and as Matt explained, the bonds are expected to be placed with Zions Bank Corporation, but the resolution does permit authorized officers alternatively to determine to sell the bonds at a public or private sale, subject to certain conditions. Obviously, that flexibility is built in, but as Matt and Chuck have already discussed, clarifying the chairman's question, we fully anticipate that this private placement will be closed in short order.
Do you have to come back to a quick question? Do you have to come back to us if it's not a private placement?
The resolution gives your authorized officers flexibility in the event that some sort of frankly highly unlikely catastrophic sort of situation happens between now and closing. But the bank has been very, very committed to the transaction. There's a fully executed term sheet. All the we're basically ironing down the last details on the loan agreement and ancillary documents.
Can we be notified if it doesn't happen?
I'll defer to Matt and DASNY officers.
Jerry, certainly if this does not happen, the staff will notify the board and we will give you an update on what the alternative financing would be. Clearly, if it goes from a private placement to a public offering, that would be several weeks or months down the road. So, but yes, if it does not happen, we'll notify you.
All right, thank you.
In accordance with the authority's financing guidelines, The resolution contains restrictions on the ownership and transfer of the bonds directly purchased in a private placement. Specifically, the Series 2020A resolution restricts ownership and transfer of such bonds to qualified institutional buyers, or QIBs. Furthermore, each QIB, including the initial purchaser, will be deemed by its acquisition of beneficial ownership in the bonds to have represented and agreed, among other things, one, that it will not transfer the bonds in any manner to a subsequent transferee except to a qualified institutional buyer. Two, that it has conducted an independent investigation of the risks involved with ownership of the bonds and has been provided with all the information it deemed necessary and desirable relating to the obligated group. It has made any investigations it deemed necessary and desirable in order to reach an independent decision with regard to the purchase of the bonds, and it has not relied on the authority in this regard. Proceeds of the bonds will be loaned to Touro College and New York Medical College pursuant to separate but substantially similar loan agreements. Each loan agreement obligates the applicable New York member to make payments to the bond trustee in amounts and at times sufficient to pay the principal and sinking fund installments of and interest on each New York member's allocable share of the Series 2020A bonds. Amounts required to be paid for the fees, costs, and expenses of the authority, the bond trustee, and the master trustee, a party to the transaction which Chuck will discuss shortly, are to be paid directly. The obligations of Touro College and New York Medical College to make payments under their respective loan agreements will be general obligations of the college and New York Medical College, respectively. The obligations to make payments under the loan agreements will be absolute and unconditional, and the amount, manner, and time of making payments will not be decreased, abated, postponed, or delayed for any cause or reason, or by reason of the happening or non-happening of any event, irrespective of any defense or any right of set-off, recoupment, or counterclaim, which the New York members may otherwise have against the authority, the board, the bond trustee, the master trustee, or any bondholder for any cause whatsoever. The payment obligations under the loan agreements will be secured by the Series 2020A obligation issued by the obligated group, which is similar to a promissory note, whereby the obligated group members promise to repay the loan. This Series 2020 obligation in turn will be secured by a pledge to the master trustee of certain revenues of the members of the obligated group and by one or more mortgages on the facilities being financed with the proceeds of the bonds, as well as the mortgages previously granted to the authority and assigned to the master trustee on designated educational facilities of the New York members, and other mortgages and deeds of trust granted to the master trustee relating to certain properties of members of the obligated group outside New York State. Chuck?
Yeah, thank you. Now, this financing utilizes a master indenture structure. Now, those of you who are on the board in 2014 and 2017 have sort of already heard me speak about this, but let's just go through the master indenture structure again, briefly. Master trust indenture was executed by the obligated group and the master trustee in connection with the issuance of the 2014 bonds. And obligations issued by the obligated group under this master indenture in 2017 are in a parity with the 2014 bonds. Now, as Robert mentioned earlier, a new obligation, to be called the Series 2020A obligation, will be issued by the obligated group under the MTI in connection with these Series 2020A bonds. The 2020A obligation is obligation number 8 under the MTI. It secures the obligations of Touro College and New York Medical College to make the payments under the loan agreements, as Robert had just previously described. Now, as a result of the issuance of this 2020A obligation, DASNY's 2014 bonds and 2017 bonds, as well as bonds issued by other members of the obligated group in California and Nevada, will be secured on a parity basis under the MTI. Now, a couple of minutes ago, we heard a discussion of an intercreditor agreement. A master indenture, one of its functions is to serve as an intercreditor agreement, assuring the parity nature of existing indebtedness. The MTI is really the principal contract that governs the members of the obligated group. It provides the basis under which the obligated group incurs and secures debt. And it also provides the security, which Robert previously mentioned, the mortgages, and also the pledge of gross revenues. Now, with respect to Touro College, this pledge is extended to what are called healthcare and other designated enterprises, which are essentially the healthcare operations of the college. And this includes the Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine, Touro College of Pharmacy, the School of Health Sciences, and the dental school, as well as related business lines. Now, the master indenture governs the pledging of assets, including pledging or otherwise encumbering accounts receivable, and the granting of additional liens on mortgage property to secure the indebtedness, all within the limitations set forth in that contract. And it provides that any additional indebtedness may be incurred only if certain additional debt tests are met under the master indenture. The obligated group has provided evidence that it will pass these tests in connection with the issuance of the 2028 bonds. The MTI also requires the obligated group and Touro College and its affiliates to maintain certain debt service coverage ratios and liquidity tests as set forth in the MTI. Now, just to conclude with the discussion of these tests, because quite frankly, there are 5 of them. And in a prior presentation, I sort of told you how this 5 tests, as compared to usually 1 test, provide extra security in relation to the operations of Touro and the issuance of the bonds. And quite frankly, we've also seen evidence of satisfaction of these tests as well. And these include an overall debt service coverage ratio of 1.20, which is typical, and a debt service coverage ratio of 1.5 related to the obligated group enterprises that I just previously discussed. In addition, a leverage ratio, which is essentially liabilities over assets. Touro is required to maintain unencumbered liquid assets of 50 million and to maintain a liquidity ratio of not less than 40%. So that's the MTI in summary. And this concludes our presentation. At this point, Robert and I would be happy to address any questions. We thank you all for your consideration.
Do the members have any questions, please, for Robert, for Chuck, or for Matt?
I have 1 or 2, Mr. Chair.
Please, sir.
I guess it's really for Matt. Matt, the underlying the transaction on the condo unit,
Yes.
not the medical college. I had a couple of questions. Do you know the total amount of square footage that they're taking on the 2 floors? Is it 2 full floors? Is it partial floors?
It's 2 full floors.
Okay. And that's the space they're currently leasing? Did I read that correctly?
No, they're buying two floors that's separate from where they lease.
Are they still leasing there, or they're moving? I thought I read that.
They're moving. They're moving. The point of this transaction is the debt service on the new condominium will be beneficial from a cost perspective as opposed to the lease and the rent that they pay. I am looking at the information I have, and I do not have the square footage.
But they're 2 full floors in the building.
They're 2 full floors, correct.
And the 32, how does that get split between the buy
20,
and the renovation?
26 and 6. 26 for the purchase price and 6 for the build out.
And the mortgage, that the various securities that we get include a mortgage on the units that they're purchasing?
They do, and the point of this transaction is that mortgage goes up to the top at the master trust indenture, and that is shared, as Chuck was saying, through the MTI. And again, he was speaking to how the relationship between an MTI and an intercreditor agreement. But again, that is collateral, that mortgage will be held at the MTI level. I just,
and
the answer to your question, I just got an email, 43,910 feet, and I am assuming that is for both floors.
for both floors, that's
Total square
two stores, right? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Jerry. Are there other
Thank you.
questions from the members? Hearing none, the resolution appears at the very end of the real tab 2 or the virtual tab 2, the very last document. You've had a chance to take a look at it. It's very simple.
Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions? Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let you know that Wellington was able to join us in the midst of this presentation. So he will be
Welcome,
Thank you very
Wellington.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very brief resolution. You've had a chance to take a look at it. Are there any questions about the actual resolution itself? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it?
So moved.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there a second? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the motion will pass unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, if I can clarify just for a second, it's Mike Cusack.
Yes, Mike.
Just to make sure we note this correctly in the record, I believe the motion, it appeared to be made on my screen by Wellington, but I'd like to confirm that and then also confirm the second.
Wellington, I thought it was you making the motion, but okay. And who was seconded
the motion.
it, please?
Yeah.
You seconded the motion. Jerry, did you make the motion?
No, I did not make the motion.
Okay. Who moved to approve the resolution?
I will. I didn't, but I'll be happy to do it.
Okay.
Beryl,
Thank you,
we were very
Beryl.
grateful.
Somebody did.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've already taken the vote then. There's no opposition. The motion carries unanimously. Mr. President, the next agenda item is your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a bit of business to take care of through the report. As you know, at our meeting this month, we have several things that we have to approve by statute. So we'll be going through those, some as part of my report and some separately as part of the audit report. So I first want to start with just talking about the DASNY reopening. As New York has started to phase reopening, DASNY has as well. Our goal this summer is to have our building available to our employees who need to have access to do their work more easily while maintaining less than 25% density at any given time, and also making sure that we have all health screenings and cleaning protocols in place. And so at this point, the building is open 4 days a week. It is being deep cleaned on Wednesdays and late Fridays. In addition, we have PPE, security checks, health screening checks, and all of that has been going well. I just want to shout out to our building maintenance and security staff. They don't always get their recognition, but they've done a great job in getting our building ready and maintaining it, and so far it's been very smooth. Most employees continue to do a lot of their work from home, but they all have access to the building a couple of days a week if they need to come in for any specific reason. So we've tracked that. We kept the density low, and on July 15th or so, we will be reviewing our protocols, and we will look at Labor Day as our next assessment of whether we have additional people come to the building or change our protocols based on various items, including most importantly, of course, health and safety, but also schools and other things. So that has gone well so far. We have had some benefits from this remote working. We've done a lot more work on electronic payments and DocuSign, as well as other communications tools, and we continue to look for improvements that will be long-term and lasting through this situation. As far as the impact on DASNY's business, you have received the draft of the authority's budget office report that shows that the fiscal year 2019-2020 was very, very strong. Clearly, we're in a different environment now, and so we continue to monitor the uncertainty both of our own work as well as that of our underlying clients and customers, and continue to communicate with them. And while we're doing that, we're just being as tight as possible from a budget perspective, making sure that we don't make any unnecessary expenditures as we deal with the unpredictability of our future revenues. However, so far things have gone fairly well. You'll hear in our construction report that we are fairly active on the construction side. And so I feel like we're in reasonable shape, but again, we're being very cautious and keeping close communication with our customers. That turns to an update on the 20 Liberty move. We have been working back and forth with the new landlord, and it looks like they will deliver the keys, quote unquote, to us in the December 15th timeframe, which was a little further out than we had anticipated. However, in calculating both the savings from our Penn Plaza office, as well as pushing our interior design folks and our logistics people, we will save in excess of $1 million in our move from Penn to Liberty over what was expected. So we feel good about the savings. We've worked hard to make sure that all of our employees in New York City are engaged. And for several of the employees who kind of work in the office on a day-to-day basis, once the move is complete out of that office, they will be assigned other tasks, including going to our field sites downstate and assisting with some work up in Albany to keep them busy and occupied. But they've done a great job so far of keeping busy. And we will have an all-hands call tomorrow with the New York City office to make sure they understand the protocols and sentiments. Once we move out of Penn Plaza, we've identified some small spaces that if people need to have meetings or do work in an office environment, they will be able to do that. Moving on, all of us are, of course, tuned to what's going on in the world around George Floyd's untimely and unspeakable death, as well as the other police items and injustice items that have been going on in the public sector. And so at DASNY, we're doing several things to really take a lead in here. One is Michael Johnson, who was appointed head of diversity prior to us going remotely, has been charged with best practices, figuring out how we at DASNY can be more engaged and making sure that all of our employees of any background feel comfortable and feel like they have a good environment to work within. I'm also pleased to announce that I have pressed both Portia Lee and Steve Currow on the fellowship program. You'll recall that for budget reasons, we decided to hold back on the fellowship program this year, but I really felt personally, and I think the team agrees, that in the current environment, this fellowship program is an important opportunity for minority students to be introduced to DASNY and the professional world. And so we've reimagined both of those a little bit on the public finance side. Portia's taking the lead on that. And I'm pleased to announce that on the construction side, we will begin a construction fellowship that mirrors not exactly, but closely our public finance fellowship. Both of those will be kicking off in the August, September timeframe. And just pleased that DASNY can continue to contribute in this environment in a way that is both meaningful for our internal employees, but also allows us to work with some minority youth who might not have an opportunity otherwise to be so engaged. So I'm very pleased with that. Moving on to construction, a lot of our construction business has continued through the spring. It is down somewhat, but we do have quite a bit of summer work that we're doing for SUNY. It's valued approximately $40 million. And I'm going to ask Steve Currow to give us a brief construction update. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Ruben. Good morning, everyone. I'll just deliver a very high-level overview of what's going on in construction today in the division. Of course, with the phased reopening being led by construction across the state, many of our projects, as Ruben alluded to, are back up and running. That being said, a number of them were deemed essential and never shut down, but those that did are back up and running. There are some exceptions to that. Any city-funded CUNY community college work is still under a suspension. We do a fair amount of work at the CUNY community colleges, so that is impacting our downstate efforts. In addition to that, a few GOZER projects are impacted. And in addition, on the SUNY side, any really new commitments associated with SUNY projects, that being on the design or construction side, are also on hold at this time. Otherwise, from a construction-only perspective, as Ruben noted, we've got 21 summer projects across the state advancing, in addition to 6 capital projects at SUNY campuses that started last May. That would be the May of 2019. That all of that activity should conclude by August of this year. The CUNY senior college work is moving ahead strongly. A number of new senior college campuses have come on board, letting us know that they can support our construction efforts, which then opens the door for us to remobilize our contractors and get that construction work resumed. And for the most part, the mental hygiene program, OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, those customer agencies and their programs are all up and running, really with the exception of OPWDD, where any occupied facilities, they have us holding off on any indoor project work. As far as any new commitments on the design or construction side, the budget bulletin B1223 has put a damper on moving any new projects forward. So on the design side, we have a number of design starts that we want to get to that are in limbo at this time, as well as a number of projects that are ready for bid and award that we are not advertising, or in the event that we did advertise, we are not awarding. Our customer agencies in dealing with the budget bulletin are working directly now with New York State DOB, who has asked them to formally put forward projects that they deem or desire an exemption from the budget bulletin for. So we've been working closely with our customer agencies, coming up with these lists of projects. They are forwarding those on to DOB. And from what I understand, once every couple of months, DOB will make a decision on which projects will be exempted from the budget bulletin. So we're getting dribs and drabs of news from DOB on projects that we can restart. In addition, on the SUNY side, any new projects, so the SUNY Residence Hall program is really exempt from the budget bulletin. The Res Hall program is off budget. But at the same time, we are battling the uncertainty of the next bond sale with regard to cash to back any new commitments for SUNY projects. And as a result, SUNY has done a cash flow analysis, and we're working with them on trying to figure out which projects we have cash to back any new commitments for. So there's a number of SUNY projects that are on hold as well, although we're expecting to hear this week that some potential design projects for summer of 2021 may open up for us. Not sure what it means on the construction side for projects that are ready to move into construction. So that's really at a high level what's going on with the customers. At the lower level in the construction division, just a couple of things to share. So 300 plus construction division staff are either fully engaged at their project sites, or they are working either from the office a couple days a week or exclusively from home. Our safety manager and our safety consultants have been out to many of our project sites. It's good to report that there have been few new cases of anyone either on the DASNY side or more importantly, the larger construction community of the designers and contractors that are heavy in numbers on our project sites reporting a positive case of the virus. I did stop in at Moynihan and Javits yesterday down in New York City, and remarkably, there's 1,100 laborers at Moynihan Station alone, 1,100 every day. And since March, only 13 cases of COVID have been reported. So it's pretty remarkable. When I walk that site, everyone is taking, the guidance and guidelines very seriously. Everyone's wearing masks, respirators. Everyone has gloves on. It's incredibly hot inside the building, but the labor force is following the guidelines, which is a good thing. And the same could be said for Javits. So, the guidelines and guidance that we put forward that our legal group has helped us with and we've communicated to the contracting community has been taken seriously. All the medical surge work on with regard to DASNY's efforts at Javits, Old Westbury, and South Beach have all been completed at this time. Just updates on two large projects in particular. On the FIT project, we're awaiting guidance from the state of New York and the city of New York on approval to award the two contracts associated with that project. And on the DOH lab front, we continue to work on the procurement process and working with the state division of budget on that project. Our implementation for our construction management program is still on track to go live on January 1st. And our implementation team is working hard to make that happen. Ruben, that concludes my report.
Great, Steve, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Steve?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ruben. It's Al. I was taking a note on something else, and I missed your comment on the SUNY summer residence program. Is that suspended, or are we still in progress? Are we working toward an end game?
I'll talk about SUNY 2020 and then 2021. The SUNY 2020 work is well underway. We have 21 projects valued at approximately $40 million. Those projects are all off and running. In fact, we're about halfway through the summer with those projects, and those projects will conclude in a July or August timeframe of this year, in time for the return of the students in the fall. On the 2021 side, we have a few projects from the summer of 2020 that were not advanced that will happen in the summer of 2021. We have a few projects that we were able to engage a consultant on the design side before we were asked to hold back on those projects. Those designs are advancing, but we do have a number of designs that are not advancing as we await word from SUNY on our ability to move those projects forward. So 2021 is kind of up in the air right now as far as how many projects we'll have to advance.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Before we move on, this is not a question but a comment. Those of you who've heard me talk about the fellowship program know how much it means to me personally and how much I think it does for DASNY's image. I had not thought, it's interesting, I had not realized that the Floyd movement would energize as many companies and firms as it has to look for opportunities to support minority causes, black and brown. I am grateful, Ruben, to hear that we're doing this, but Steve, I'm even more grateful to hear that you've been pressed into service to create a construction fellowship for some lucky boy or girl, man or woman, who will get to see DASNY's construction side as a fellow. It's a fabulous opportunity, and thank you very much for getting it done, or for trying to get it done, working on it now. It is heartening to hear that. My third comment, Ruben, before I forget it, is DocuSign. Could I talk to somebody at DASNY about DocuSign?
I'm sure that Mike Cusack can figure out the right person to talk to and get you to that person.
Thank you very much. Whenever you can.
Al?
Yes.
I think I just wanted to reinforce what you said about the program. You know, we had the pleasure of going to the award dinner last year. There were a fine group of candidates, and I think it's a great thing that we're back on that program. And thank you, Ruben, for that. And I also, Al, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't note that, you know, DASNY, since I've been on the board, now it goes back 10 years or so, has always been in the forefront regarding diversity and regarding our WMBE program, including specifically in regard to the financial component of it. And I just think, you know, that we wanted to thank you for actually being out there in front of this for many years, and we'll continue to do so. So thank you, Al. And thank you, Ruben,
Thank you,
also.
Jerry.
All right. But just going back to the business end of this, though, and I gather, Ruben, you're all over it. I'm sure you are. You know, these things impact the budgets going forward, you know, on the construction end. And construction, you know, is a good part of our operation. So I guess we just have to watch it all carefully.
Yeah, I'll say, Jerry, you know,
fingers crossed.
Yeah, our team has done a great job. I think the good news is, you know, Steve and his team are so close to the clients that, you know, as they get information real time and we get information real time, we're sharing that. We're making sure people know that if we delay X, it will cause Y. They're all in good stead. And then paralleling that, you know, we are making sure from a budget perspective that we are, you know, staying very tight, very close, no unnecessary expenditures, and we'll continue to be projecting out as we get design in and new customers in, you know, kind of how the next, next 12 to 18 months looks. You know, the uncertainty is difficult, but I'll tell you, you know, Steve and his group have done a great job of being in front of clients, predicting what we need to do, trying to be helpful. You know, under Paul's leadership, the, you know, finance and operational team have done a great job of making sure that we are monitoring budget, making sure that we're not having issues looking at payments. You know, Caroline has been doing a great job of staying close to the second floor to make sure that any new things, pronouncements come out of DOB that we're clear on. And then Mike Cusack's done a great job of keeping us up to speed on the legal side. So, you know, it's been a real team effort. We spent a lot of time on it. You know, the good news about uncertainty is it shows you whether they have a good team or not. And I've been really pleased with how the team has come together on that.
Yep, and I certainly endorse it. I get to give a shout out to Paul, who actually gets my my emails every week on the build out there. Paul, thank you very much for staying on top of all that in these difficult times. Planning a build out in the middle of COVID-19 with all the changes happening is far from an easy assignment. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing the info.
I would just add one thing that, you know, as far as how a project would be impacted by a fellow or an intern, the nice thing on the construction side is these folks are billable. I mean, they are a contributing DASNY revenue generator for us, and they will, in some sense, take the place of a DASNY staffer or a part-time staffer who would need to be there anyway. So it's really a win-win for us. I mean, you know, we certainly get to interview someone for 2 years, and at the same time, it's a great opportunity for them. And they act as a revenue generator for DASNY and the customer agency all wrapped together. So
and hopefully they get a long-term position, because we
That's
need
always the goal.
younger folks in the construction world, as you know. And by the way, Steve, thanks for wearing the tie, by the way, today. You look good there, Steve.
I scrambled to get it on. I saw Matt Bergen had one on, so I left the video clip and put it on.
In case you notice, I don't have my video on, so there's no tie on here. Anyway.
What an astute board we have.
I also want to say that I'm very proud of being on DASNY, in part because of the NWBE program and always being in the forefront of the next initiative, be it interns or whatever else may be on your plate, Ruben, that I'm looking forward to hearing about.
Yes.
So I think it's been exemplary, and I think a model for the state and for states everywhere. So I think, thank you for making me a part of it. I never stop learning, and I'm proud to be on DASNY.
Well, thank you, Beryl. That's a
We
great
all echo that. Thank you,
segue.
Beryl.
Thank you so much.
I echo that. Thank you.
That's a great segue. The next part of my presentation is the procurement and contract annual report, which you will have a resolution on. And I've asked Mike Clay and Matt Moore, the co-heads of procurement, to give that report. As you know, we are one of the leaders in the MWBE space and SDVOB space. Those guys did a great job again this year of getting us over 30%. So, Michael, why don't you take over, and then Matt.
Might have to unmute, Michael.
Michael Clay, you're muted.
Here I am. Sorry about that.
No
Good
problem.
morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members, senior staff, and guests. I just want to give you a brief synopsis of where DASNY stands as it relates to MWBE participation for fiscal year 1920. We recently received information regarding our participation. As Ruben indicated, DASNY was successful in achieving the aspirational goals that the governor has established for the 97 agencies and authorities throughout the state. DASNY attained 31.28% MWBE participation, which equated to approximately $184 million, both in prime and sub payments to New York State certified MWBEs on DASNY customer-related contracts. This 184 million, actually 184,199,540, represents a $4.4 million increase over last year in terms of payments made to New York State certified MWBEs across the state. These accomplishments position DASNY to better serve our clients and to promote diversity and inclusion in the New York State contracting process. I think, as I've heard comments from several board members, you know, DASNY has enjoyed, at least during my tenure, which is approaching 21 years, a leadership position in MWBE utilization and programming, and we are continuing that proud tradition. Additionally, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, SDVOBs, which was enacted by the governor and the legislature in 2014. DASNY is continuing assist SDVOBs with completing work on DASNY projects on behalf of our clients. And so we use numerous strategies and programs to identify, notify, educate, and support SDVOB enterprises across DASNY's complete platform of services. That includes also non-construction related professional services. So with that being said, OGS, who is responsible for the administration of the SDVOB program, in its most recent annual report dated December 31st, 2019, DASNY ranked 4th out of 97 state agencies and public authorities in disbursements to SDVOBs. So what does that basically mean? That means that we were 4th in the state in terms of awarding dollars to service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, which I have to thank the procurement staff and actually the entire staff of DASNY, because this is not done on an island. We all work very hard, and obviously my team in the Opportunity Programs Group leads that effort, and the commitment of those men and women across the agency is noteworthy. I also would like to mention, as I complete my remarks, about the Small Business Pilot Program. DASNY, and Mr. Chair, you may remember this, we started out trying to get this legislation about 5 years ago. And so what it enables us to do is to take 5% or a max of this year, $20 million of DASNY client-based work and be able to initiate programming for MWBE small businesses across our various platforms. So I'm working hard with management to initiate this program, and we're looking forward to probably the second quarter of this year of being able to initiate procurements, which would allow us to, again, assist small businesses across the state based on our client workload. I want to say this in closing.
Mike, before you close, that's terrific news. It's Al. Thank you for bringing me up to date. I do remember our discussions. I didn't think it was as far back as 5 years. And I'm disturbed to hear that it was 5 years because I don't feel 5 years older. But thank you for working as hard as you have on that, and thank you for making it work.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. We're always trying to think ahead. Just carrying out the initiatives as projected by the governor, his team, and executive management is what we're supposed to do. But I think what I've tried to pride myself on is thinking outside the box and providing an opportunity to small businesses, because the MWBE program helps to provide economic development across the state of New York and underserved communities and various communities across the state. So this program is important. It has been important for DASNY during my tenure, and obviously the commitment of the board and executive management continues to make that happen. So with this program, this will follow in the long line of other programming that DASNY has initiated, and we look forward to providing you more information. And that concurs my report. I would pass it off to Matt Moore, who will have a presentation on the procurement report. Matt?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board members, Ruben. The 1920 procurement report is being presented today for approval pursuant to the requirements of Section 2879 of the Public Authorities Law. The report includes procurement contract transactions that have an actual and estimated value of $5,000 or more. Procurement touches projects at all phases of our projects, from design through construction, in many instances through furniture acquisition, equipment and fit out at the end of a project. It's a significant driver of our ability to provide value to our clients. Day-to-day operations and execution of procurement transactions are managed through 4 units within procurement. There's professional services, construction contracts, purchasing, and job order contracts. And today I'm going to touch on just a few of the highlights of the report. The report reflects significant number and dollar value of procurement transactions DASNY processes in a given year. For construction-related services in 2019 and 20, procurement processed close to 2,200 original procurements valued at over $539 million. This includes original professional service contracts, construction contracts, purchase orders, term work authorizations for professional design, construction work orders for JOC, as well as the GC minor maintenance program. This is about a 14% increase over last year's dollar value and is a 2% increase in transactional volume. The procurements that DASNY's conducted and methods used to procure and execute the work also reflects the flexibility that we bring to our clients in these various delivery models. The transactions included this year are alternate delivery, such as CM at risk, expedited contracting methods, such as the term consulting contracts, or GC minor maintenance or job order contracting programs. And then there's the tried and true procurement methods, such as the single prime contracting, which we've continuously done for construction. Procurement activity in the report supports a range of projects that we do for our clients, while also delivering on many of the state's initiatives, such as energy performance, building resiliency for GOZER, and continued work for the quality of life and appliance purchasing programs for NYCHA. Construction activities comprises the largest portion of the 2019-2020 procurements. DASNY processed approximately 735 construction-related procurements with a value of approximately $428 million. Approximately $358 million, or 83% of the construction activities, were procured using the standard design bid build procurement method, with an average construction contract of approximately $3.4 million, with the largest being approximately $71.6 million for CUNY's Lehman School of Nursing. With regards to the information that we're reporting on administration and operations, I just wanted to report that there is an ongoing effort to refine that information to be more accurately reflective of the procurements as opposed to expenditures from prior procurements of past years. And this is an initiative that we will continue to deal with in 2021 as we refine the procurement report. That's the conclusion of my remarks, and I would ask for your approval of the resolution adopting the report if there's no questions.
Thank you, Matt. It's Al. Are there questions for Mike or for Matt? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the resolution? I cannot tell you where it appears in your material, but I have it in front of me. It's a very brief resolution. What we're approving are in the aggregate, the Appendix A, awarded professional services, Appendix B, awarded construction contracts, Appendix C, awarded purchase orders, the DASNY procurement policy, the DASNY procurement contract guidelines, and the vendor transaction details. Are there any questions? There being none, may I have a motion?
Joan Sullivan, I make a motion.
Thank you, Joan. Is there a second?
Second, Wellington.
Thank you, Wellington. Again, to make this easy, rather than asking for those members who are in favor of this to respond vocally, I'll simply ask whether there are any objections to the approval of this resolution. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, and we have approved the procurement contract annual report.
Mr. Chairman, I will continue with my report. Thank you for both Michael and Matt for those reports and the great work you guys did last year, and certainly continue to do going forward. One last construction item before we move into public finance. Although it was a little bit lost because the legislative session was fairly truncated, we did get a general authorization for design build. We had that delivery method on some specific projects before, but we now are including in the legislation that allows DASNY on a case-by-case basis, as we see appropriate, to use design build as a delivery method. So it's good to get that legislation passed, and hopefully in the future we will be able to implement that for our clients. Turning to public finance, DASNY over the past several months has completed $4.5 billion of short-term notes and a $3 billion line of credit against the $7.5 billion of authorization that we did for short-term borrowing for the state. We believe this will be the extent of the short-term borrowing, but those three transactions have all been closed and completed. And the SUNY financing that you approved at a special board meeting is moving along and should come to market sometime close to after July 4th weekend. So a lot of great work has been done on those transactions. I was involved probably more than normal in just the day-to-day processing, and I must tell you that our staff did a fantastic job of working through those transactions for the state and getting really great execution on behalf of our clients. So I really was pleased to be part of that. With that, I want to turn this over to Portia to go through her public finance report, as well as the couple of reports that need to be adopted. So Portia.
Thank you, Ruben. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there is background noise on the call, though. So somebody, if you're going to be busy, mute your phone.
Okay, thank you. So brief market update. Total new issue supply is currently about $187.8 billion year to date. That's about 15.6% higher than supply levels seen this time last year. Total supply for this week is expected to be about $7.3 billion. Top rated municipal bonds were unchanged across the curve on Tuesday, yesterday, with the 10-year and 30-year AAA MMD yield, each remaining at 0.88 and 1.63% respectively. U.S. government bonds were weaker on Tuesday, with the 10 and 30-year Treasury increasing in yield by 1 basis point and 2 basis points respectively, to a 0.72% and a 1.49%. Municipal bond funds reported inflows of $1.7 billion for the week ending June 17th. The 1-year, 10-year, and 30-year MMD have decreased by 52 basis points, 38 and 44 basis points respectively since the May board meeting. Regarding our pricings and closings, in addition to the 3 state financings that Ruben had just mentioned, since the last board meeting, we also priced 3 other transactions: the school district's pool, St. Joseph's College, and the NYSARC transaction. I'd like to make a few very quick high-level observations about the market. I noted last month that we were seeing market access, particularly for highly rated transactions. Most recently, we've also seen the market open up for lower rated credits. Generally speaking, MMD, our municipal benchmark, has been moving lower, and spreads have been widening. So market participants have been looking at both spreads and absolute rate as bonds price. I'd like to turn now to the annual bond sale report. The annual bond sale report for fiscal 2019-20 was included in the supplemental mailing. Also included in the mailing was an overview of the report, which preceded the actual bond sale report in the materials. So what I'd like to do is to walk through that overview briefly. On page 2, according to the bond buyer, DASNY was the #2 issuer in calendar year 2019. On page 3, we issued approximately $9.8 billion in our last fiscal year in 25 financings, with a particularly busy fourth quarter. Page 4, overall, we worked on 5 financings totaling approximately $6.3 billion, which were undertaken on behalf of our public clients last year, and 20 financings totaling approximately $3.5 billion were undertaken on behalf of our private clients. Pages 5 through 9 of the overview detail the financings in various buckets, including state-supported debt, other public debt, independent colleges and universities, healthcare, and other independent institutions. A few general takeaways. I would note that the school district's financing and the Montefiore financing use credit enhancement, and that was on a partial basis. I'd also note that there was a significant number of private client financings last year. We undertook 20 of them as compared to 6 in the previous fiscal year. One of the things I guess I would note in general, as far as the private client financings is concerned, is, we were in an environment of very low rates. Obviously, that's a good environment for savings and refundings, as well as for funding capital needs. Certain healthcare institutions undertaking tax-exempt bonds came to us after issuing taxable bonds on their own. And we saw a good amount of business from repeat clients, which speaks well of our efforts to strengthen our client focus, services, and processes. On page 10, this reflects the TELP activity for the fiscal year. We worked on 4 TELP leases totaling $57 million. And page 11 reflects the activity over and under 10 million. All of the TELP leases, the 4 which we did last year, were over 10 million. Lastly, I'd like to thank the staff in public finance, portfolio monitoring, legal, and finance, as really this report and the 25 financings represents their body of work. I'd also like to note the work of the public finance staff in producing the report, and in particular, the efforts of Sharon Hanak and Matt Bergen. There's a resolution that follows my memo that accompanies the report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Are there questions for Portia? Hearing none, the resolution is a very brief one. If you've not had a chance to take a look at it, you should. But it is very brief and asks us to approve the DASNY annual bond sale report for the fiscal year just ended. Hearing no questions, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
Be my pleasure, Mr. Chair. It's Jerry.
Jerry, thank you very much. Who will second?
And I'll second it. It's Beryl.
Beryl, thank you very much. Again, rather than asking all who are in favor to say aye, I'll simply ask whether there is any opposition to the approval of the resolution which would approve the report. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. The annual bond sale report is approved. And thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we'd like to let everyone know that the KPMG representatives, Marie Zimmerman and Jeffrey Coach, have joined us.
Marie, Jeff, thank you very much. Good to have you.
Good morning.
Morning.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm concluding my report unless anyone has any additional questions or comments, and turn it back to you for the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Sure.
So now I believe Kimberly is going to take the baton and run the meeting for a while.
Thank you, Al. Good morning, everyone. Before we go through the details of the year-end audit and the financials, just want to give you a summary of this year's audit results. KPMG expects to issue an unmodified opinion on DASNY's financials. They did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in our internal controls. As a result, they won't be issuing a management letter. Before I turn it over to Marie to go through the required communications and a summary of the audit, I do want to take a moment to thank the people that made these results possible. As you know, in ordinary circumstances, our financial records and making our financial statements are extremely voluminous and complicated. And this year's audit certainly posed very significantly unusual circumstances as we worked remotely. Despite the many challenges the team faced, they continued to maintain the accuracy of our financial records and provided outstanding support to KPMG, both of which were critical in achieving the unmodified opinions. In particular, I would like to thank Karen Sider and Li Zhu for leading us through the audit with significant support from Carmen, Steve Winters-Bona, Tanette Tomlin, Stanley Reed, Heidi Lenge, Sophie Lai, and their teams. I would also like to thank Gita Wu from our internal audit team, who coordinated the gathering of hard copy documentation from our various internal teams to provide electronic versions of KPMG. Kim Ellis and Jeff Arnold, who despite taking on significant new responsibilities at the beginning of our year-end audit work, continued to fully support the audit. And to our building services team, who ensured that we had safe access to our office whenever it was needed to support the audit. Without the dedication, support, and oversight of these folks and their teams, the information in the audit results that we are discussing today just would not have been possible. I would also like to thank KPMG for their support in their role in making it. And with that, I will turn it over to Marie.
Thank you, Kim. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. I am Marie Zimmerman, the lead audit partner from KPMG on the DASNY account. I've been auditing DASNY for the past 8 years. With me today is Jeff Coach, our KPMG senior manager, who has been auditing DASNY for the past 12 years. As Kim noted, I am pleased to have the opportunity to present with you today. And it really is a testament to Kim and management, who proactively identified issues and embraced technology to ensure the integrity of DASNY's financial reporting. We thank you, management, for your coordination and collaboration with us throughout the audit. I also would like to thank Kathy and the Internal Audit Department for their direct assistance as they were instrumental during the shutdown to obtain and perform audit procedures on our behalf that we could not obtain electronically. With, as Kim noted, our results, we will issue an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can receive, and it states that the basic financials are presented fairly in all material respects. We did perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted governmental auditing standards. We will also issue an opinion on the required supplementary schedules, the MD&A, and the required OPEB and pension schedules, which is in relation to opinion, and it means that it's subject to audit procedures applied to the basic financials. And we've concluded that they are presented fairly in all material respects and will provide an unmodified opinion. Our required communications were provided yesterday and in writing to the audit committee, and they included the following. There was no uncorrected or corrected audit differences identified during our audit, which again is a testament to management's strong systems of internal controls over financial reporting. We did not identify any material weaknesses nor significant deficiencies in internal controls. We will provide a report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with other matters based upon the audit of the financial statements performed in the governmental auditing standards. And lastly, we had no disagreements with management, and we had no significant difficulties encountered while completing this audit. And furthermore, we will finally also issue a report on the compliance with the requirement of Section 2013 of Title II of the official compilation of the codes, rules, and regulations of the state of New York, which will state that DASNY was in compliance with those rules and regulations. That's a quick summary of our presentation from yesterday. And with that, I'd like to open up to any questions that anyone may have.
Hearing none, Marie, I suppose that Jeff is now going to do the rest of the report, or is there a rest of the report?
Nope, we were just going to provide a summary of the report that we presented yesterday.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So are there questions for Marie and Jeff? Hearing none, I believe it's time for us to consider the resolution. Kim, unless you have other comments before I ask the board for a vote?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to review some of the highlights of the year's financials.
That's fine, and thank you.
If we start with the executive summary, some of the highlights from our lines of business included a record-breaking year for our debt issuance activities, issuing $9.7 billion in debt. In our construction management line of business, we brought the new 262-bed residential building to OMH's South Beach Psychiatric Center. We completed a relocation of SUNY Albany's state-of-the-art Health and Counseling Services Center into an on-campus location, and began construction of a new 257-bed, zero-net carbon-certified residence hall at SUNY Poly's Utica campus. From an accounting standpoint, we did not have any new accounting pronouncements to implement. There was going to be one implementation this year, and the governing body put in place extensions for all of the upcoming new pronouncements, such that we did not have to implement anything this year. Turning to our financial results, overall, our financial statements reflect a decrease in our net financial position of $67 million, majority of which is activity in our restricted funds. In terms of debt issuances, as I noted earlier, we had over $9.7 billion of issuances. Nearly 95% of that came from refundings and new money, with over a third coming from new money issued to our public clients. In terms of customer distribution, 65% came from our public clients. We had $6.4 billion in retirements for the year, with over half of that coming from bonds that were refunded by new DASNY bonds and nearly 40% coming from scheduled redemptions. We ended the year with $58 billion in outstanding bonds, with our public clients making up approximately 70% of the balance. In terms of our construction management line of business, our total construction and loan disbursements decreased approximately $1.1 billion in 2020, with 78% coming from our public clients. Our investment balance decreased approximately $800 million, ending the year at $4.1 billion. That concludes my remarks on the financial statements. If there are any
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'm going to ask the board to vote on the approval of the basic financial statements. I want to commend John Gardner, though, before I do that, for leading an excellent meeting of the audit committee yesterday. The reports were a bit more extensive, but were necessary for the audit committee. And I think Marie and Jeff and certainly Kim did a terrific job of reporting to the committee. Having said, I'm sorry?
I would just add to the record that the audit committee approved a resolution recommending the financial statements to the full board.
Thank you, John. There being no questions, may I have a motion, please, to approve the very short, very brief resolution that if passed, will approve the basic financial statements.
This is Joan. I make the motion.
Thank you, Joan. Is there a second?
This is Wellington. I second.
Thank you very much, Wellington. Again, I'll abbreviate the vote process and ask whether there is any opposition to the approval, to the resolution approving the basic financial statements. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. The basic financial statements are approved. Kim, you have other matters to come before the board?
I do, thank you. We are also required to file the annual investment report with the Office of the State Comptroller. That report includes our investment policy and guidelines, and summaries of investment income earned and fees paid during the year. A copy of DASNY's financial will also be with the report. There was one change in our investment guidelines during the year, which you approved last month, removing the requirement that a maximum of approximately 50% of all investments be held in a single bank. This change was effective April 2019, fiscal year ended March 31st, 2020. That concludes my remarks. Are there any questions?
Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Is that you, Wellington?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Joan.
Is there Joan, thank you very much. Again, we'll shorten the approval process, the vote. Is there any opposition to the approval of the annual investment report? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Kim, I think you have at least one other matter.
Thank you. I believe Ruben will be reviewing the...
Yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. President.
No problem, that's fine. And I'm not going to be long at all on this. The Public Authorities Accountability Act annual report is a requirement we have to file with the state. You've all received a copy of the report. We gave an extensive summary yesterday at the audit committee. And throughout the meeting today, you've heard updates on our 2019-2020 performance, which was very, very strong. And so I'm very pleased with the report. Appreciate everyone's help putting that together. And certainly I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have on it. But again, most of the information has been summarized already in the meeting, so I don't want to take any time with that now. So, Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Ruben or anyone who may have worked on this Public Authorities Accountability Act annual report? It is extensive. It's very detailed. It seems to me that it is more voluminous than it was last year, or at least the year before. I think it's excellent. I've gone through it, at least in part. And I have to say, Ruben, that you guys did a fantastic job. At least that's my view. May I have a motion, please, to approve it? The resolution.
So moved.
Thank you,
And I'll
Wellington.
second Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl. Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. And thank you all very much for your attention to all of this. It's been, we've covered a lot of ground. I think we had 8 or 9 resolutions today, and that's probably a multiple of what we normally have. I think we are near the end of the meeting. If the members have not completed their Project Sunlight training, then please note. I'm sorry? If the members have not completed their oh, I'm sorry, there is an additional item, and it's the quarterly investment report. Kim, are we going to do that in addition to the annual report?
Yes, thank you. We have included our standard quarterly report that provides the board members with the change in the investment balances for the last quarter, their current balances, as well as information regarding the maturities and the distribution of holding the funds. I have no particular remarks to go through. I am happy to answer any questions that any board members may have.
Are there questions for Kim? We don't have to vote on this, and I hope everybody went through it. And now Mike Cusack, the Project Sunlight training.
Thank you. I was just unmuting myself. I apologize.
That's fine.
Let's see here. Project Sunlight is a publicly accessible online database to track information regarding outreach from certain individuals to government decision makers. And DASNY is required to periodically train DASNY's employees and board members who may interact with the public regarding the requirements of Project Sunlight. The materials are in the electronic board book, and they only take a few moments to go through, but for the benefit of new or recent members, the focus of the requirement would be on instances where a board member or employee is contacted in person or by video conference by an outside entity for the purpose of influencing a decision regarding one of 5 covered categories. These interactions are referred to in the materials as an appearance, and essentially they get entered into the Project Sunlight database within 5 days of their occurrence. In practice, most communications with DASNY will relate to the procurement of goods and services. A number of things are excluded from Project Sunlight. Exclusions include things like letters, faxes, emails, or telephone conversations. These do not need to be reported. And the Project Sunlight administrator is Matt Moore, who we just heard from the procurement division, and members that have a reportable appearance should communicate that interaction with Lori Hewell, executive assistant. And the emails and contact information are in the cover memo for both individuals. Last, to complete the training cycle, the members only need to review the materials provided and then send an email to Diane Folletti, our legal assistant, at her usual address. If you are an agency member or designee who has completed this training as part of your other state duties, you only need to email Diane and advise that you completed Project Sunlight training at your home agency, and your responsibility is done. That concludes the report. If there's any questions, feel free to call me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Are there questions for Mike about Project Sunlight? I will report that Mike, I have completed my Project Sunlight training and have reported appropriately to Diane.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other business to come before the members? Any questions or comments any of the members might want to make? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Al. Chair.
I assume we have no opposition. The motion is approved, and the meeting is adjourned.
Goodbye,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Stay safe,
Appreciate
everybody.
it. Great
Stay
meeting.
healthy.